हेलो दोस्तों, बिजनेस पॉइंट में आपका स्वागत है। और अभी हम कर रहे हैं इकोनॉमी। ठीक है। डिटर्मिनेशन ऑफ द एक्सचेंज रेट। डिफरेंट कंट्रीज हैव डिफरेंट मेथड्स ऑफ डिटर्मिनिंग देयर करेंसी एक्सचेंज रेट। इट कैन बी डिटरमाइंड थ्रू फ्लेक्सिबल एक्सचेंज रेट, फिक्स्ड एक्सचेंज रेट और मैनेज्ड फ्लोटिंग एक्सचेंज रेट। Flexible exchange rate. This exchange rate is determined by the market forces of demand and supply. It is also known as floating exchange rate. As deficit in figure 6.1, the exchange rate is determined where the demand curve intersects with the supply curve, that is, at point E on the y-axis, point Q on the x-axis determine the quantity of US dollars that have been demanded and supplied on E exchange rate. In a completely flexible system, the central banks do not intervene in the foreign exchange market. Suppose the demand for foreign goods and services increases, for example, due to increased international traveling by Indians. Then, as depicted in figure 6.2, the demand curve shifts upward and right to the original demand curve. The increase in demand for foreign goods and services result in a change in the exchange rate. The initial exchange rate E0 equals to 50, which means that we need to exchange rupees 50 for $1 at the new equilibrium. The exchange rate becomes E1 equals to 70, which means that we need to pay more rupees for a dollar now, that is rupees 70. It indicates that the value of rupees in terms of dollars has fallen and value of dollar in terms of rupees has risen. Increase in exchange rate implies that the price of foreign currency dollar in terms of domestic currency rupees has increased. This is depreciation of domestic currency rupees in terms of foreign currency dollars. Similarly, in a flexible exchange rate regime, when the price of domestic currency rupees in the terms of foreign currency dollars increase, it is called appreciation of the domestic currency rupees in the terms of foreign currency dollars. This means that the value of rupees relative to dollar has risen and we need to pay fewer rupees in exchange for $1. Speculation. Money in any country is an asset. If Indians believe that British pound is going to increase in value relative to the rupee, they will want to hold pounds. Thus, exchange rates also get affected when people hold foreign exchange on the exception that they can make gains from the appreciation of the currency. This exception in turn can actually affect the exchange rate in the following way. If the current exchange rate is rupees 80 to a pound and investors believe that the pound is going to appreciate by the end of the month and believe be worth 85, investors think if they gave the dealer rupees 80,000 and bought 100 pounds at the end of the month, they would be able to exchange the pounds for rupees 85,000, thus making a profit rupees 5,000. This exception would increase the demand for pounds and cause the rupee pound exchange rate to increase in the present, making the beliefs self-fulfilling. Interest rates and the exchange rate. In the short run, another factor that is important in determining exchange rate movements is the interest rate differential, that is, the difference between interest rates between countries. There are huge funds owned by banks, multinational corporations, and wealthy individuals which move around the world in search of the highest interest rates. If we assume that government bonds in country A pay 8% rate of interest, whereas equally safe bonds in country B yield 10%. The interest rate differential is 2%. Investors from country A will be attracted by the high interest rates in country B and will buy the currency of country B, selling their own currency. At the same time, investors in country B will also find investing in their own country more attractive and will therefore demand less of country A's currency. This means that the demand curve for country A's currency will shift to the left and the supply curve will shift to the right, causing a depreciation of country A's currency and an appreciation of country's B currency. Thus, a rise in the interest rates at home often leads to an appreciation of the domestic currency. Here, the implicit assumption is that no restrictions exist in buying bonds issued by foreign governments. Income and the exchange rate. When income increases, consumer spending increases. Spending on imported goods is also likely to increase. When imports increases, the demand curve for foreign exchange shifts to the right. There is a depreciation of the domestic currency. If there is an increase in income abroad as well, domestic exports will rise and the supply curve of foreign exchange shifts outward. On balance, the domestic currency may or may not depreciate. What happens will depend on whether exports are growing faster than exports. In general, other things remaining equal, a country whose aggregate demand grow faster than the rest of the world normally finds its currency depreciating because its imports grow faster than its exports. Its demand curve for foreign currency shifts faster than its supply curve. Exchange rates in the long run. The purchasing power PPP theory is used to make long run predictions about exchange rates in a flexible exchange rate system. According to the theory, has long as there are no barriers to trade like tariffs, checks on trade, and quotas. Quantitative limits on imports. Exchange rates should eventually adjust so that the same product cost the same whether measured in rupees in India or dollars in the US, yen in Japan, and so on, except for difference in transportation over the long run. Therefore, exchange rates between any two national currencies adjust to reflect differences in the price level in the two countries. Example 6.1. If a shirt costs $8 in the US and rupees 400 in India, the rupee dollar exchange rate should be rupee 50 to CY at any rate higher than rupee 50, say rupee 60, it cost rupees 480 per shirt in the US but only rupees 400 in India. In that case, all foreign customers would buy shirts from India. Similarly, any exchange rate below rupees 50 per dollar will send all the shirt business to the US. Next, we suppose that prices in India rise by 20% while prices in the US rise by 50%. Indian shirts would now cost rupees 480 per shirt while American shirts cost $12 per shirt. For these two prices to be equivalent, rupees $12 must be worth 480 or $1 must be worth rupees 40. The dollar therefore has depreciated. Fixed exchange rates. In this exchange rate system, the government fixes the exchange rate at a particular level. In figure 6.3, the market determined exchange rate is E. However, let's suppose that for some reason the Indian government wants to encourage exports for which it needs to make rupee cheaper for foreigners. It would do so by fixing a higher exchange rate, say rupees 70 per dollar from the current exchange rate rupee of rupees 50 per dollar. Thus, the new exchange rate set by government is even. Even is greater than E. At this exchange rate, the supply of dollars exceed the demand for dollars. The RBI intervenes to purchase the dollars for rupees in foreign exchange market in order to absorb this excess supply which has been marked a AB in the figure. Thus, through intervention, the government can maintain any exchange rate in the economy, but it will be accumulating more and more foreign exchange so long as this intervention goes on. On the other hand, if the government was to set an exchange rate at a level such as E2, there would be an excess demand for dollars in the foreign exchange market. To meet this excess demand for dollars, the government would have to withdraw dollars from its past holding of dollars. It, if it fails to do so, a black market for dollars may come up. In a fixed exchange rate system, when some government action increases the exchange rate, thereby making domestic currency cheaper, is called devaluation. On the other hand, a revaluation is said to occur when the government decreases the exchange rate, thereby making domestic currency costlier in a fixed exchange rate system. Merits and demerits of flexible and fixed exchange rate systems. The main feature of the fixed exchange rate system is that there must be credibility that the government will be able to maintain the exchange rate at the level specified. Often, if there is a deficit in the BOP in a fixed exchange rate system, governments will have to intervene to take care of the gap by use of its official reserves. If people know that the amount of reserves is inadequate, they would begin to doubt the ability of the government to maintain the fixed rate. This may give rise to speculation of devaluation. When this belief translates into aggressive buying of one currency, thereby forcing the government to devalue, it is said to constitute a speculative attack on a currency. Fixed exchange rates are prone to these kinds of attacks, as has been witnessed in the period before the collapse of the Bretton Woods system. The flexible exchange rate system gives the government more flexibility, and they do not need to maintain large stocks of foreign exchange reserves. The major advantage of flexible exchange rates is that movements in the exchange rate automatically take care of the surplus and deficits in the BOP. Also, countries gain independence in conducting their monetary policies since they do not have to intervene to maintain exchange rate, which are automatically taken care of by the market. Managed floating. Without any formal international agreement, the world has moved on to what can be best described as a managed floating exchange rate system. It is a mixture of a flexible exchange rate system, the float part, and a fixed rate system, the managed part. Under this system, also called dirty floating, central banks intervene to buy and sell foreign currencies in an attempt to moderate exchange rate movements whenever they feel that such actions are appropriate. Official reserve transactions are therefore not equal to zero. ठीक है, और इसके साथ ये चैप्टर हो जाता है हमारा खत्म। अब करेंगे, अब इकोनॉमी इसी के साथ भी कंप्लीट हो जाती है पूरी। अब नेक्स्ट करेंगे पॉलिटी। ठीक है, तो ये करेंगे अब स्टार्ट कब से, मंडे से देखते हैं। ठीक है।